When Thoreau wrote Walden Pond, when he returned to nature and he was trying to articulate a human sense that we, in fact, do not belong in a factory. We belong in Walden Pond, in an area of great serenity and closeness to nature. And what he's actually telling you is a human yearning to be in harmony with nature, which is a very Eastern, Oriental perspective, and which we all share. I think you know this. Unfortunately, our educational system, our cultural systems, we've been brought up in American Hollywood movies and therefore subject to the same brainwashing as any normal American. And this has given us, the Filipino, a very dual personality. So there's always those two visions. Ako personally, I have to express a sentiment, which is that I feel in my blood that I am Filipino in a very unique way, and that Filipino-ness is very uniquely centered in this environment, in this place. I live here in Tanay not as a pragmatic or deliberate, but rather I feel like I belong here. And that sense of parochial belongingness is important to my identity as a Filipino. But more than that, it translates backwards. It then begins to change my Western values, which I learned in school and in my educational system, and began to adapt again to the rural environment that is here. And I'm grateful to the province of Rizal and Tanay because they've kept their cultural identity intact through all of this. Of course, they go to Manila, they watch movies there, they have the children educated there, but the social mores, the fabric here is intact. And if you stay here long enough and become part of it, then you know you're Filipino. And you know it in a very unique way, not in some advertisement type, commercial type way of expressing the sentiment, but just being who we are and what we do. Let me tell you something. 300 years ago, every Filipino family, whether they lived in Manila, lived in a provincial city, they all had farms in the mountains. Huh? Why? Nung araw, pag dumating yung mga Muslim raiders at meron nang nagkalembang na, oh, eto na yung mga Moro, takbuhan lahat sa bundok. Pag pumunta sa bundok, kahit abutin na ng isang buwan yung mga Moro doon, buhay sila dito dahil may kamote, may mais, may bigas. Buhay sila. And then when the threat was gone, they would all come down. And when the Spaniards came, the same thing. All. So we've always had farms. We've always subsisted on our own efforts. In the old Botong Francisco murals, you'll see how prosperous the Philippines really was. In fact, it was so prosperous, we were able to support a Spanish colony here for 300 years that basically fed off our agriculture. And we fed them off the surplus. Hindi naman tayo nagugutom nun. Pero nakakapagpakain tayo ng libu-libo mga Kastila in a level of comfort and luxury that they were used to of the sweat of our brows. We were good farmers. We always have been productive. And no part of the islands, no matter how much we are just an archipelago in the ocean, we have mountains in the middle of the island, beaches at the bottom of the island. You ask, where's all the planting getting done? Right? Well, basically in the mountains. We understood agriculture in the mountains. Go to Banawe, go to Sagada. You'll see the rice terraces. That's how we subsisted prior to the Muslims, prior to the Spaniards, prior to the Americans, prior to the Japanese. I think what we're really talking about is the future. And while a lot of people like to frame the future in terms of the present, that means looking at present developments and then trying to telescope it into the future. I'm afraid change isn't quite like that. A lot of the stuff that's here in the present will not be here soon. The oil industry won't be around much longer. I think the national grid, where electricity is distributed by one authority, will not be around long. Factory employment won't be around much longer. And for those who understand the way technology is changing the world, employment isn't going to be what it is today. Two industries are going to be impacted almost directly. One is the call center, where you answer customer requests. Artificial intelligence has collated all this data from all the call centers in the world, and they've got it down to a database where the most common questions can be answered by a machine. Okay? So the Philippine call center industry is moving into what we call back office outsourcing, office outsourcing, where we have Filipino accountants, Filipino actually doing work, transcribers, actually doing work for companies abroad through the internet. Now this is active employment, part of a knowledge economy, but no longer mechanical. At some point in time, even that will become mechanical. And artificial intelligence will be able to distinguish enough of the nuances of the differences to actually make decisions that humans can make. So a lot of the employment opportunities we're looking at today aren't going to be there. The question for your children and your grandchildren is, what are they going to be doing? They obviously aren't going to be doing what I did the last 40 years. Yeah. So obviously, you have to prepare them. How can you prepare for them? Some people will just accumulate money, put it in the bank, and hope that the money will be there when their children need it. Yeah. Assuming, of course, we don't have a global financial cataclysm that makes all money valueless.
Still fiat
yeah. Because if we're not doing fiat money, then all your effort is gone.
Yeah.
Because that's all you accumulated, fiat money. So what I'm saying is, you have to begin to look at the future in a very different light. So climate change, water crisis, food crisis. These are the three crises, I call them the three horsemen of the apocalypse, that we should be looking out for, because they're the ones that climate change is going to affect most seriously. The oil industry is dying because our planet is dying, and the necessity for reducing hydrocarbon is no longer a choice, but an inevitable transformation. Because of that, hopefully, the atmosphere won't kill agriculture. Because if the atmosphere kills agriculture, we're all dead anyway. And I guess your next option is to call up Elon Musk and try to get a seat to Mars so you can move somewhere else. So I'm saying, if you really wanted to prepare your children, first, you have to make them see the future, even a glimpse of it. Just the way I showed it to you. And you yourself, in your own context, in your own situation, you have to make a decision how you're going to address that problem. I've addressed my problem my way, which is basically to go back to agriculture, go back to an agriculture that's not necessarily organic, but sustainable. Yeah. Sustainable in the sense that the less you need outside inputs to produce your food, then the more sustainable you become.
Without killing the soil.
Second, that your agriculture is inclusive in that it benefits the community in which you are operating in. That means whatever you're doing, whatever you're planting, it's for the community. It's not for some distant beneficiary in some foreign country who doesn't actually need it. So basically, become part of the community that you live in, so that you have a support system, you have a network below, under you, so that when things go bad, you have neighbors that you can go to. And when they get into problems, you're there, you're able to help them, and you become part of a social fabric that supports the whole community. All I'm actually saying is to try and return to some very basic community values that Filipinos have always treasured, but was lost in urban living or living in the urban culture or living in a Western economy. All of these things may have been destroyed for you, but I want you to know that they can be restored anytime you go home. And the more often you go home to your farm, your community, or your hometown, the sooner that you will feel yourself able to. I think our biggest obstacle for what I'm trying to do and what we're all trying to do, which is to restore a sense of independence in our food production. Remember this, for a long, 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 long time, Filipinos always thought planting was fun. Okay? Because it was the time when we were planting that the whole community came together, and the little children would play and the women would cook and the men would be out planting and helping each other finish their own plots and their own fields. And then in the waiting season between that, there would always be religious fiestas, and then by the time harvest came, it was time to share the bounty of and have even grander fiestas and feeding each other and helping each other. Sometime, I think in the 1900s, somebody taught a Filipino child a song called "Planting Rice is Never Fun." And everything changed after that. So if today you tell your children, "Wag ka magiging farmer, kawawa ka naman. Don't you know, planting rice is never fun?" So if you thought there was something wrong with our mindset, I say that probably is the reason why there's something wrong with our mindset.